This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Do you ever have a story that you just can't get out of your head?
One that you play the details of over and over with your friends?
Well, you've come to the right place. I'm Claire.
And I'm Susan.
And this is Justice Pending,
a weekly true crime podcast where we discuss tantalizing crimes with more questions than answers.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Justice Pending. I'm Claire.
And I'm Susan. And today we're telling the story of a woman whose unsolved murder inspired an Oscar-nominated film, but whose family is still waiting for justice more than 30 years later.
Her name was Kathy Page, and her case, became a symbol of what happens when grief meets frustration, and when families feel abandoned by the system that's supposed to protect them. I actually heard about this case while I was visiting Texas A&M University to talk about my memoir, Killer Story: The Truth Behind True Crime Television. And a student in their journalism department came up to me afterwards and said, "Have you ever covered the murder of Kathy Page in Vidor, Texas?" And I actually knew it, Susan, because my family used to drive from Houston to Louisiana to visit relatives, and we would see the billboards.
Billboards.
Yes.
The famous billboards. Yes.
And I remember being a child and seeing her picture and the fact that her case was unsolved and that her family believed that her killer had gotten away with murder. And it was very memorable, but I hadn't thought about that case in a long time.
Well, speaking of a long time, can you believe this is our 40th episode, Claire?
I cannot. Yeah.
That's a long time. That's, a baby. It's incubated in 40 weeks. So a quick congrats to you, to me, to us, to the show.
Yes. Go team, go.
Go team, everybody go. That we've, here we are. Thank you, everyone, for listening wherever you started your journey with us.
Yes, we really appreciate it. And we value our listeners and hearing from you and knowing which cases you want us to cover. So this is definitely a fan appreciation episode.
Absolutely. So let's jump right back into the case then. Before we get into the crime scene and the investigation, I, as always, think it's important to start with Kathy herself, because she wasn't just a billboard, not just a headline. She was a 34-year-old mom of two little girls, which is just heart-wrenching.
Yes, her daughters were very young at the time. They were still in school. Erin and Monica, they've been out in the public eye ever since this happened. And Kathy, she worked locally as a waitress at Hofbrau Restaurant in Beaumont, a very nice steakhouse. And by all accounts, she was lively, fun, beautiful. I mean, Kathy Page was just beloved by so many people.
And, well, I guess not beloved by everyone, because she was also in the middle of some big life changes, including a separation from her husband, Steve. And divorce papers were looming. But Kathy, being Kathy, saw that as a chance for freedom, really. And her family, by all accounts, her family says she had made peace with it and was ready to move on.
Yes. So they'd been together for almost 13 years at that point. It wasn't a quick marriage. It wasn't a quickie relationship, but it was time, she felt, to move on. And so, as often happens, that separation put Kathy in a vulnerable spot. Divorce can bring out the worst in people. And in this case, the people closest to her are the ones investigators zeroed in on.
As they always do. So that brings us to the morning of May 14th, 1991. Let's set the scene. It's the morning, May 14th, 1991. A paperboy notices a car in a ditch near Kathy's home. And it's early dawn, as, you get the paper, the paperboy's on their paper route out. And at first, it does look like an accident. So he goes in for a closer look.
Yeah, so the car's just down the road from her house, literally 75 yards, so just shy of a football field.
Mhm.
And Kathy's body is inside, slumped over in the driver's seat. But right away, the details don't add up to a car crash.
Yeah, for one thing, there's hardly any damage to the car. And it looks like it rolled into the ditch, didn't crash into the ditch. There were some sodas in the front seat. They weren't spilled. They were, they still had the liquid inside. And most, probably crucial of all, Kathy was not wearing her seatbelt.
Exactly. And investigators say that her feet weren't even near the pedals, they were tucked back against the seat. And this is setting off all kinds of alarm bells that the accident has been staged. So from the jump, police are suspicious. And when the autopsy came in, it confirmed them. So Kathy hadn't died in a wreck. She'd actually been strangled.
Oh, horrible. And also very difficult to cover up and stage. I mean, who are like
Yeah.
that's pretty obvious when that happens. But that does mean that not only did someone kill her, someone staged that whole scene to make it look like a crash and, try to get a cover up going.
Yeah. And you talk about how hard it is to hide strangulation, especially if you don't stage it in a way that targets a neck injury, right? I mean, I think we can all remember the case of Damien Hurd, where there's questions
Yep,
of if he was strangled, but he was found in a noose, so injuries to his neck could be explained.
that's right.
But here, her neck is just lying there. There's no way it could have been um, injured in a car wreck. It just does not add up. So it kind of has that haphazard feel to it
Mhm.
where someone was killed and they hadn't planned what they were going to do with the body afterward,
That's right.
and they had to rush and do something. And from almost the very beginning, suspicion fell on Steve Page, Kathy's estranged husband.
Right. And as you said, they'd been married about 13 years. They did have two daughters together, but by 1991, the marriage was over. They were officially separated. Divorce was on the horizon. And family members say Steve was controlling, could be controlling, and even sometimes physical, though he always denied that.
Yes. So he has said that they were not physically violent with each other. There was no domestic violence in the house. Their daughters, who were very young at the time, but they also told authorities that they had not witnessed violence between their parents. Were they influenced by their father, who was
Right.
still alive, and their mother, who couldn't obviously say anything herself? It's hard to know, but it definitely raises some questions. And there were multiple friends and neighbors and people who came forward saying they knew that Kathy had been hurt by Steve and that they had seen injuries, bruises on her arms, other signs that all was not well in that house. So when police knocked on Steve's door the morning that they had found Kathy, his reaction was pretty strange. According to reports, he threw himself on the couch crying, just like bawling. But detectives noticed something. There weren't actually any tears.
I mean, we've seen this before
We
in
have.
other cases. And of course, everybody grieves differently. But that
Yes.
is just, I mean, the fact that it was noted is something. Now, they weren't living together, or were they still living together at the house?
So she was in the process of moving out to an apartment, I'm sorry, I misspoke. He was in the process of
I see.
moving to an apartment. She was still there with the kids, and she had asked him to come stay with the kids while she went out with a friend. Well, we're going to get to that in a minute, but they were kind of living in both places. It was very fresh, so there was some overlap.
Got it. Because the part that really stood out to me, this is why I asked, before the police even told Steve what happened, he looked toward the ditch where Kathy's car was, that's 75 yards away, like he
Yep.
already knew. And so I was thinking, well, he must have then been in that house, his house, really. their house.
Right. So her car was gone, and he could have reacted in any way, but investigators noted right where his eyes went. And to them, that was chilling. And it said a lot. And investigators later learned that there was even more pointing to Steve. In fact, he admitted to having sex with Kathy the night that she disappeared. And that's a very interesting statement because their separation was not like an on again, off again love affair, at least according to Kathy's sisters and friends. She was moving on. She was not going back to Steve. They had not been sharing a bed for many months at that point, and all of her friends knew that. So it's interesting.
That raises a lot of questions. So why do you volunteer that information? Did he misbehave and there's some forensic evidence that will tie him to her in those final hours? I mean, that seems like a strange thing to offer up at the time.
Absolutely. I think we all wonder what's going on there. So let's lay out the timeline as best we can. We know that Kathy goes out that evening and she sees a man in Beaumont, someone she was romantically involved with. He, of course, had to be looked at, and he even volunteered to take a polygraph and passed it. So the police clear him. He has been very upfront and cooperative with the investigation and had no reason to continue to be a person of interest or a suspect. So that is the last person that she told anyone she was going to see. But that, as we know, she left that location and somehow ended up in that car with a strangulation.
Exactly. So she left that location in Beaumont around 2 a.m. And that's really, that is the last time anyone sees her alive. And less than 3 hours later, when the paper boy goes around in early morning, she's dead by that point in that ditch, in that car, staged.
Right. So meanwhile, back at home, Steve says Kathy had asked him to watch their kids. So he was there with the children who were asleep. And again, his story is that before Kathy left, they had sex and then he went to bed.
Right. So that's, I'm still having trouble with that. So he comes over, they're intimate. She then goes to meet her boyfriend and
according to him. Yeah, that's the timeline.
Okay. So that's odd. But then things get even more muddy here. Multiple family members say that the next morning, before anyone should have been doing chores so early, Steve was up and, doing laundry, and people smelled strong cleaning chemicals, and a carpet cleaner had even been rented. I don't know that Steve was known for his cleanliness, but here we go.
Right. This is pretty fastidious here, right? We've got lots of things going on. So the laundry has attracted a lot of conversations and attention, and rightfully so, because this is before 6 a.m. He's doing a load of laundry. Now, he has said that he was washing sheets, that one of the kids had wet the bed, and that's usually an urgent matter. You want to get those sheets washed. It's gross. It's smelly. So that could explain it. However, the fact that it also coincides with his estranged wife going missing, there are two very different explanations for that laundry.
Well, sure. But the carpet cleaner, that.
Right. And that's, it just starts to, one thing could be a coincidence, but the more cleaning evidence that you have, the harder it gets to believe that it's innocent. So Steve's explanation for the carpet cleaner is that he spilled grease on the carpet. Okay. And it's pretty interesting to think that he would have been carrying around an open jar of grease that morning.
It's just like a straight, be more specific. Are we talking like grease from a stove, from a car? But the other strange part is that when he showed, I guess, where the grease allegedly was spilled, it was on the exact spot in the living room where he claimed they had been intimate.
Yes. So a couple of things stand out there. Number one, you've been together for 13 years and you're going at it on the living room floor with the carpet. This is not a great place to have sex, right?
But you're also in the middle of you're separating, but she's on her way to go on a date. I mean, the whole thing is very strange.
It doesn't make sense. I don't think many people who've been together that long just have sex on their living room floor. I mean, maybe, I don't know. But it doesn't sound like a place for a romantic encounter. It does sound like a place where you might attack someone who's leaving to go be with another man that you didn't want them to be with. But whatever the case, he said that they had had sex on the living room floor on the carpet. And later,
and had grease.
Later he said he was carrying an open mayonnaise jar full of cooking grease, like they had saved cooking grease, and just tripped and fell and spilled the grease on the carpet, and so needed to get a carpet cleaner to take care of it. And there were family members who helped him clean. It was apparently quite the operation.
Yeah, that also the fact that he was moving out, like it wouldn't have been his problem.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
So, neighbors and family members kept noticing changes to the house. They noticed the carpets being scrubbed, other things being cleaned. To them, it didn't look like a clumsy grease spill. It looked like someone cleaning up after a violent struggle.
And I'm surprised that no investigators went through. Like, did the forensic team say, halt the cleaning, we have to investigate?
No, we'll get to that in a minute, Susan, but it's probably a good time to take a break. Let's let our sponsors come on, and we'll be right back.
Perfect.
All right. Well, welcome back to Justice Pending. We are talking about the unsolved murder of Kathy Page and the suspicions that fell on her estranged husband, Steve Page.
Yes. So Steve is busy cleaning all kinds of things all the time. There's a lot of grease being spilled.
Yep.
And despite all of this, despite him looking out exactly in the ditch where the car was found when he's informed of her death, despite all of these things, he's not criminally charged. So in 2000, Kathy's family takes him to civil court and sues him.
Yes, and that's a pretty risky move in a lot of cases. The idea that you would charge someone, with wrongful death, that you would seek out a civil case without a criminal case ever being brought forth, no one being arrested even, that's a high bar. But the jury sided with Kathy's family and found Steve Page liable for the wrongful death of Kathy Page.
And yet he walked free. So to this day, he insists that he didn't kill Kathy. He blames the police. He says they bungled the case and that they made him the scapegoat because they never looked around at anyone else.
Right. So, I mean, this case was a very big deal. The civil ruling is so important to the family. They look at that as a measure of justice for Kathy because 12 jurors agreed that Steve Page bore responsibility for her death. And the standard in civil court is lower than in a criminal one, but it is still significant.
Yeah. I mean, and then the fact that charges weren't brought.
I know, even after that.
Even after is strange. Isn't that strange?
It is. It really is. And people look at connections between Steve Page and his family and local law enforcement. And, he was well known around that town and he had close ties to several of the investigators that had known him basically his whole life. So there's definitely questions of corruption, questions of some type of like a bribe that could have been paid to local law enforcement. That's come up before. But let's talk about one of the bigger headline making elements of this case. And that's, first of all, the fact that on Kathy's grave, Steve was caught on video kicking flowers off her headstone and kind of throwing a fit. He was convicted of desecrating his wife's grave.
Well, good that he's
Yeah.
convicted of this.
Yes.
The whole thing is just heartbreaking. Like, why
Yeah.
bother going then for show? But imagine, the family seeing that. This was such a public case, and he's obviously being tried in the media at this point
Right.
versus a criminal, which, in a small town might be worse, honestly.
Yes. And the fact that he felt compelled to go to her gravesite and cause this destruction is really bizarre.
Yeah.
And he tried to explain it away, like he tries to explain away everything, that he thought that the flowers were cheap and that's what enraged him. But I think most people would agree that if you think the flowers are cheap on your wife's grave, desecrating it doesn't really right that wrong. So it was a really unusual action to take if you don't have any ill will toward the dead, right?
It sounds like he's angry. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And he's not the only one who's angry.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about Kathy's father, James Fulton. So he put up billboards along Interstate 10. These were multiple billboards that called out the police, accused Steve directly, and demanded justice.
Icon.
Yes.
Wow. Way to use your resources. And gosh, this is only because he had been convicted in civil. Do I feel like actually putting up a billboard to accuse someone of a criminal act is justified? Otherwise I don't, that would be strange. But this is something that I think is commendable, and he faced this head on, and it really, this is iconic now. Actually.
Yeah, the messages were blunt. Vidor police botched the case, waiting for a confession. This could happen to you. They became the inspiration for a movie, 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri. And it's a case that just really won't go away.
Yeah. Even to this day, one of those billboards still stands.
Yes.
It's truly part of the landscape at this point. So,
yeah, absolutely.
The fallout wasn't just horrible, hard on her father. Her daughters are growing up amidst all this. They grew up split between their dad's home, who by now they know might have murdered their mother, and their grandparents. And then eventually they became totally estranged from Kathy's side of the family.
Wow. Yeah. It's such a sad story. And it keeps, it just keeps going because their youngest daughter tragically died by suicide in her 20s. Their older daughter is still alive and she's raising her own kids now, but it's just so fractured in that family. And according to reports, she has little contact with her mother's side of the family.
The whole thing would be just so awkward, and she doesn't know them and not through no fault of her own. And but yeah, you see these ripple effects of Kathy's murder still being felt decades later.
Yes, I don't think it will ever go away. And where the case stands today, the Vidor police chief says that modern technology has brought out new information. Won't give any more details than that, but did state that the case is with the district attorney's office.
Is there a statute of limitations?
There is not, Susan. There's no statute of limitations on murder. So,
wonderful. Okay,
yep.
Here we go. So there's also a $50,000 Crime Stoppers reward, which is the largest one ever offered in Southeast Texas for tips leading to an indictment or an arrest.
Yes, but 30 plus years later, there's still no trial and no real justice for Kathy.
Yeah, and really, like we said, the billboards, iconic, what a move.
Yeah.
Her father is so strong. And again, there's still one up. So, and inspired a movie. I mean, it all comes down to the family and they're
It
being
does.
relentless. Yeah.
And people continue to talk about this case, like the student who brought it up to me just this week, right? And so I think as long as we're saying Kathy's name, as long as we're looking for answers, there's hope in this case. And we know that justice delayed is justice denied, but we hope that this delay won't last forever.
Exactly. So if you know anything about this case, call Crime Stoppers of Southeast Texas at 409-833-TIPS. And of course, you can remain anonymous.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Justice Pending, and we'll be back next week with an all-new case. Justice Pending is recorded in Dallas, Texas for Rebel Studios. It's hosted by me, Claire Sanama, and Susan Passoni. Our theme music is Bending Truth, licensed at premiumbeat.com. We appreciate all listener feedback. Leave a review wherever you're listening right now, and we might read it on the air. Thanks for joining us.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.